Hello everyone, I hope you all are having a good day or night, depends on what time you're watching this. As you may or may not know, Subnautica 3 is in the works and is set to release in between 2024 to 2026, but it's looking to come out in 2025. Before you keep watching, I do want to mention that this video contains a lot of spoilers, so if you're okay with that, then continue watching. So today I'll be taking a deeper dive into Subnautica 3 and, well, what they need to do so it doesn't become another Below Zero. Don't get me wrong, I didn't hate Below Zero, I did feel like it was just very underwhelming for what it could have been. Unknown Worlds did try something new and received mixed reviews, so they could learn from this and release a better Subnautica 3. If Subnautica Below Zero was the only Subnautica, to be fair, I'd be praising this game, as it was first off a new genre on the survival aspect, the story was pretty good, if you don't take into account the first game. Subnautica and Below Zero both had a different way of telling a story. I personally really like the Subnautica way of telling the story, as it was something you had to figure out pretty much on your own. Below Zero, you had Robin trying to find her sister on 4546b, the same planet, just different places. Both of these characters were very underwhelming. They had one personality, and I didn't really find them that lovable. In Subnautica 3, I want to have to explore on my own and figure out things without having a linear storyline. Both games did have a linear storyline, but I mean, without the dialogue and people rambling for ages about things, it really took that feeling of being alone and threw it just completely out the window. As we all know, in Below Zero, Alan, the alien that went into your brain and you had to build him a body, was a great concept on paper, but was executed very poorly. It felt like a chore building his body. In Subnautica, you just had to find the cure of the coronavirus, simple concept executed very well. That did create a problem for Below Zero, as the story in Subnautica already had found the cure, so what else could there be as a story? Now, we learned in Below Zero that Alan did release the coronavirus by accident. Alan did ask you to follow him back home, and that's where the game ends off in Below Zero. If the game continues from Below Zero, I'm not too sure what we could be looking at here. Maybe a whole new planet. There's not many things that could happen, either Subnautica 3 being before the first Subnautica, in between both games, or after Below Zero, or on a completely different planet that isn't even really tied in, as we saw in the game Dying Light 2. I really do want to see 4546b return, and I want to learn more about the precursors and Altera themselves, as knowledge on them is very scarce. Maybe we could figure out what the precursors were and what Altera's plans were actually, because it was never confirmed if they intended to take the coronavirus and do good or bad with it. I also really liked finding information about your missing crew, and it felt like the people in those pods were not sending you out the distress signals, and maybe a precursor was trying to analyze your moves. I'm not too sure myself what they could do for Subnautica 3 story, but they need to either add more people you can interact with that has more than just a neutral mood, or just let me explore on my own the unknown abyss and figure stuff out instead of being guided by my PDA 24/7. Also, the lack of Leviathan in Below Zero was horrid. The amount of times I died to anything in that game is easily countable on one hand, and that was just my negligence of maybe not getting air. By the time you encounter them, you just have a sea truck. They take a bite out of it and leave you alone if you run away. I really wanted to fear my life whenever I encountered one of these Leviathans. In Subnautica, by the Aurora, there was one, and you didn't really necessarily have the sea moth when you were going there, making it far more dangerous. In Below Zero, we had the ice worm that was very underwhelming, because you were not on land for a lot of the game. Yes, it did feel cool to have one of these, but I was really more annoyed by it than actually being scared of it. We can also compare Below Zero's and Subnautica sizes of Leviathans. Below Zero's felt like pipsqueaks compared to the ones in Subnautica. The Shadow Leviathan was pretty much the size of the first Leviathan you encountered in Subnautica. I mean, yes, Subnautica Below Zero had a very smaller map than Subnautica, and that's most likely why they seem to be smaller. In Subnautica 3, I want to see either bigger Leviathans, more of them, or them having special powers seen with the sea dragon that kinda shot fireballs at you. This would make it more challenging to go around, and you as the player would take a lot more precaution to navigate in those areas. Another thing that pissed me off was the horrible transition in the world of Below Zero. Out of nowhere it got foggy, or just a change of atmosphere that felt very wrong. It didn't feel like you progressed into a new zone like Subnautica did, going into a narrow cave leading to something brand new and just beautiful to look at. They need to bring that back in Subnautica 3. Yet another thing that I felt there was a lack of was vehicles. In Subnautica, you had the Seamoth unlocked at an early stage, then the Prawn Suit, and then the Cyclops late game. In Below Zero, you got the Sea Truck very early on and the Prawn Suit. You could get these really early game, and I was actually waiting to find another late game vehicle to fill in for the Cyclops in Below Zero. The sea truck on paper was also a great idea, but in the tight areas of Below Zero, felt like a chore to navigate in those tight spaces with the extension modules. I really want open areas so that no matter the vehicle, you can explore like in Subnautica. I understand you'll need, for example, the prawn suit later on in the game to progress, but give us something for late game like the Cyclops in Subnautica 3. Multiplayer, as usual, has also been a huge subject, probably one of the most requested features in the game. Subnautica was supposed to be multiplayer, but due to budget could not be realized. I see many people asking for it and some people saying to keep the series a single player game. I can see where both parties are coming from, but it could be implemented in some way to balance both groups. Maybe a solo playthrough that slightly varies the amount of resources you find and wildlife, and in multiplayer increases a few more spawns of deadly creatures and or distribution. This would be chosen whenever you're actually creating a new game, if it would be single player or multiplayer, to balance these things out so they know which one's which. In broad, what I want to see in Subnautica 3 is a better story, one like Subnautica that you have to discover yourself and uncover lore with a hint of character dialogue like Island. Bigger and more areas to explore with different fauna, as Subnautica and Below Zero did share some assets, so you know somewhat what you were looking for at times. I do understand both games take place on 4546Bs, so yes, you'd see similarities. I want multiplayer to be implemented how I previously mentioned or something similar, and I want to see a return of 4546B and another planet to explore, because about the precursors, as you saw Alan go through a portal, so maybe you could go through a portal to go onto a different planet to learn more about the precursors. One more thing that was very underwhelming was the base building. In Below Zero, it did get a massive upgrade, but it felt like it was one of those things that was like been there, done that before, and I've never really spent much time on my base. Hopefully they can do something for this and maybe make it worth your time to build. And I'm not bashing on anyone who did like it just felt like it was underwhelming in my opinion. And that's pretty much everything they could add for me in my opinion, for it to be a very good game. Now I can be totally wrong or none of this being realistic and something else that I can't even imagine happen, and Subnautica 3 just blows our minds away. I cannot wait for the teasers and more information about this game to come out. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you think an idea is unclear about something or want to add on to it, I would love to hear your guys' ideas in the comments below. So have a great day and I'll see you guys in another video.